Hello, friends. This is Dr. John WorldPeace JD coming to you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's January 2nd, 2024, in the new year. Okay, I'm going to talk about my resume as, in part, the advocate of Jesus Christ, John 14:25. Here's some basic facts about the Bible. The Old Testament was finalized by the Jews about 100 years before Jesus was born. This text wasn't finished stuff. There are parts and pieces, lots of books. They brought it together in 100 BC. The New Testament was finalized by the Catholic Church in 380 CE. The Old and New Testaments were combined into the current Bible, same year, 380, more or less. The original Christians were Jews. In 100 CE, the Zion priests put out a message that Christian Jews could no longer worship in the temple. This drew a red line and stopped the Christian Jews from converting more Zionist Jews to Jesus. In the first 100 years after Jesus' crucifixion, most of the Christians were Gnostics, free thinkers trying to understand what Jesus said. Nobody really knew. So when the Catholics finished editing the New Testament in 380, the Pope sent out a dictate that all other books about Jesus were to be burned. The Gnostic Gospels are on the burn list, but some survived. In 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered, and it consisted of about 52 Gnostic books, depending on who's counting. There were parts and pieces and pages and stuff of these books, but these were the full Gnostic volumes. Then in 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in Qumran, near the abandoned Essene community of Christians that was there. The finding of these books were the bright line between the age of Pisces religion and the age of Aquarius. These are just astrology definitions or naming of the 2150 years in between cycles, 24,000 years for the galaxy, I guess you'd say, to spin around one time with the North Star at the top. And so there's a wobble to the galaxy, and it takes 2,150 years, I believe, 21,150 years, something like that. So each 12 part has a name: Aries, Taurus, Pisces. You've heard them all. So we're headed out of the age of religion and into the age of spirituality. So right after the end of World War II, these two sets of books were found, and that threw a lot of light on the earliest Christian thinking about Jesus' message. And the Catholic Church was a little bit bothered because they had burned all these books and acted like the New Testament was the only thing ever written and there wasn't anything else, and they kind of got caught red-handed. And so what happened is the Jews held on to the Dead Sea Scrolls for about 50 years, and nobody could get to them. They were in little chips of paper, and they were acting like they, taking all this time to put them together. But in truth, when the computers came out, then they matched up all these parts and pieces pretty quickly. But it was 50 years before they became available to the general public and the scholars. Any scholar could look at them and interpret them. Jesus was a traveling teacher like Buddha. When Jesus was crucified, there was no organized church. Jesus was a Jew, and he belonged to the Jewish religion. He did not tell Peter to start a church. That was made up by the Catholics when they wrote the official Bible in 380 to legitimize the church and make Peter the first pope. After Jesus was crucified, the Apostle Paul was a radical Jew who was trying to stamp out the Christian movement. And Jesus appeared to him when he was on the road to Damascus, and Paul became a radical Christian apostle of Jesus. Paul was a Roman citizen and was highly educated. He was also very knowledgeable about the Jewish religious bureaucracy. Paul's challenge was to take the free-thinking Gnostic Jews and organize them into a religion on the Christian bureaucratic model. Free-thinking Gnostics were not going to really be to subordinate themselves to a religious bureaucracy, but some kind of organization had to be put together so that Christianity and the teachings of Jesus could be propagated into the future. Peter was an ignorant fisherman. Paul was the one with the knowledge of how to build the church, and Paul founded the church in Rome. Peter was working in Jerusalem. So Paul laid the foundation for the Christian church, but the Catholics wanted somebody they control, so they designated Peter as the head of the church. Now this again is 300 years after the fact that they're doing all this. Peter was not going to fight the church. Peter would not be a problem because Peter didn't write to the extent that Paul wrote. Most of the good part of the New Testament is what Paul wrote, and it was scholarly writings. Christianity required three persons to create. John the Baptist, who was a herald, Jesus, who was the Messiah, and Paul was the one who built the church. Paul was the one who did not complete his mission. The church today is in chaos. It's gone off the rails. And it's time to purge all the kinks in the Christian Bible. In 1100, the Catholic Church was in chaos and degeneration, and along came St. Francis of Assisi, who influenced the church and put it back on track. In 1500, Martin Luther created the first Reformation, which became the Protestant movement. Now in the third millennium, it's my job to bring on the second Reformation that will integrate the Gnostic spiritual teachings into the radical bureaucratic Christian church, Catholics and Protestants. Now I need to relate my history of Christianity. My mother was an every Sunday Christian, and so I went to church and Sunday school, Presbyterian church, because my grandmother was a Scot, and my father's family were Germans and Swedes, and they were Lutherans. My ancestry is Northern European English and Scots back to the 1600s. My mother's family came here in early 1700. My father's family came here in the middle 1800s. I went to the Presbyterian church every Sunday till 1966 when I started college and was working full time and didn't have the time to go every Sunday. I researched religion and spirituality my entire 75 years. These are the Bibles that I've had from childhood to the present. They're all well read and well worn. In 1993, I moved to Denver, and with my second wife, and for 3 years that we were there, I looked into all the Eastern religions, uh, the Dhammapada, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, Confucius, the Quran, the Book of the Mormon, and I reinterpreted those books. I didn't retranslate them, but I reinterpreted them and gave them a 20th century rhythm. And 5 of those books I combined into this, which is called Eastern Religion as Poetry. Now, anytime somebody tells me not to read something, that's the first thing I'm going to do, because I want to know why they're trying to manipulate me and what they're trying to do. So I don't believe that you're going to hell because you read other religions. It's just knowledge, and the world has got many religions. And Job asked God, why the bad people get a lot of money and success and the good people get screwed, in so many words, and other questions like that. And God said, who are you to ask me those questions? And he never answered him. So people ask why there's so many religions. Well, God's answer is, who are you to question me? So anyway, I was born into this life in 1948 with a mandate to work in the chaos that has been building since the end of World War II. But it's quickened since Notre Dame almost burned down in 2019 between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. And then COVID was acknowledged in December 2019. My whole life, all I've done has been mostly self-training and preparation for my commitment to increase the peace in the world human society during these times. I was born, when Jesus was born, there was an expectation by the Jews of a Jewish Messiah that would come out of the sky with a horde of angels who would drive out the Romans from Israel, and instead he was born in a manger. Jesus promised he would ask God, to his disciples, to send a teacher to remind Christians about the message of Jesus, an advocate, counselor, to straighten out the distortions within the corporate Christianity that he knew were going to seep in. Corporate religion is about money. It's a business. And Jesus was a spiritual teacher. I don't think anyone considered the person God sent would be a literal attorney, which I am, as opposed to just generally a counselor. Attorneys are known as advocates and counselors. Life is full of these kind of coincidences. When I changed my name in 1988 to John WorldPeace, my original intention was to change it to John WorldPeace. And a friend that I was talking to at that time said, no, you need to combine world peace, and then you'll be the only one. There's other John Peaces in the world, but you will be John WorldPeace, the only one. And so that's what I did. The book is of Revelation is 2,000 years old. The time I spent around fortune tellers taught me that the average about 20% of prophecy comes true. And that applies to the book of Revelation. I have King of Kings, Lord of Lords on my cup, and I have the same thing tattooed on my right thigh, about 8 inches, and it looks like this. So the point is this: The book of Revelation says, theoretically talking about Jesus, that Jesus would come and he would have King of Kings, Lord of Lords on his garment and on his thigh. Well, only 20% of the book of Revelation is true. And nobody really knows what it's talking about because it's talking in a mindset of 2,000 years ago. So 20% of it is true. I am the advocate for Jesus. I'm not Jesus. According to Revelation, having this on my clothes and having this on my thigh means that I am Jesus. Well, that's nonsense. I'm not. So, and also the book of Revelation says Satan is supposed to show up in the name of peace and world peace, and that's nonsense. Jesus said a house divided cannot stand. You know, if Satan starts acting like a peaceful man, then he's going to be fighting his own evil. So anyway, the point is that there's a lot of confusion there in the book of Revelations. There's three very dark souls in the world human society now: Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump. Trump curses the liberal left, the radical liberal left, which is what all Christians who follow Jesus believe in. Feed the hungry, heal the sick, shelter the homeless. And Jesus said, if you don't do this, you're going to hell, saved or not. Well, Donald Trump is out there cursing Jesus and that message. He doesn't directly curse Jesus. He just keeps knocking down the radical liberal left who are trying to heal the sick, feed the hungry, and shelter the homeless. Putin is just a secular psychopath. Netanyahu is a genocidal, murdering, anti-Semitic hater of the Semitic Palestinians and Muslims. Netanyahu is God-cursed Zionists who crucified the Zionists who crucified Jesus, their God-sent Messiah. As a result of that, God let the Romans raise Jerusalem and Solomon's temple and disperse the Jews out of Israel in 72 A.D. CE. Then in 600 CE, God gave the Muslims Israel. It's called Palestine now. And they had it for 14 years, and they built the Dome of the Rock shrine in the Al-Aqsa Mosque where the Temple of Solomon used to stand. So God said, no, Jews can't have this. I'm giving it to the Muslims. Netanyahu, and then Netanyahu and the Jews say they're the chosen nation, chosen people, but then after all that, God let the Nazis kill 6 million, exterminate 6 million Jews. Now, you raise the temple, you give Israel to the Muslims, you let the Nazis kill 6 million Jews, and the Jews say they're the chosen people of God. No, they're not. And the Palestinians are a Semitic people. They are the progeny of Ishmael. The Jews are the progeny of Isaac, both sons of Abraham. Ishmael was the firstborn. And so they're both Semitic people. So when the Jews talk about anti-Semitism to them, the Jews are anti-Semitic against their own brothers, the Muslims. It's nonsense. In the Old Testament, the sons of Adam and Eve got into a little argument, I guess, and Cain killed Abel out of jealousy. And then God came around and asked Cain, "Where's Abel?" And Cain says, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord got mad. God got mad. He knew that Cain had killed Abel. And he says, "What have you done?" And he cursed him. And you know what, folks? We got Zionist Jews right now killing their brothers, the Palestinians, the Muslims. Guess what's coming? Guess what's coming? Netanyahu's got as much contempt for Christians as he does the Muslims. But guess what, folks? There's 2 billion Christians, 2 billion Muslims, and 16 million Jews. Who is God blessing? The chosen nation of the world, of God, are Americans. Why? Because we're a society that accepts all religions, all races, all nationalities, and all genders. We are the chosen people. We are the light of the earth, showing that all the peoples of the earth can live together. At any rate, when Jesus died, his body died, and then 3 days later, he was resurrected. Well, what resurrected was his spiritual body, not his human body. Spiritual bodies can walk through walls, appear and disappear, and float up into the sky, which is what Jesus did after the resurrection. And then Jesus said, "I will be with you always." So now these Christians are saying that Jesus is coming back. Well, Jesus said he wasn't going to leave. Those are red letter words. Jesus said, "I'm not going to leave." So what did he do? He went invisible. What's he supposed to do? Take over the throne of the Pope and sit there and line his form 20 times around the earth to get an audience? People see Jesus all the time. Jesus said, "Where 2 are gathered, I will be there." Jesus is present. He never left. The book of Revelation says he's coming back. He can't come back if he never left, can he? Just more nonsense that's been screwed up by the church. So, and Jesus also said over and over, "My kingdom is not of this earth." And the book of Revelation says he's going to come back here and set up a kingdom on earth. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't add up. Doesn't make sense. My job is to straighten things out and remind people of what Jesus said. I don't have an organization. I live a minimalist life. There's nothing to join. I'm one man with one message. I'm the only global advocate for peace and world peace. I'm the only advocate for Jesus. If you think there's somebody else out there, per John 14:25, well, bring them on. Let's have a conversation. He and I, she and I. We'll see. But there isn't anybody else. I've looked. There's not anybody there. So anyway, that's who I am, briefly. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to write things to bring some of this nonsense to light. And that's my job right now. It's always been my designated job. So anyway, this is The text is referenced below the video here. Also, contribute, to all I do with the money is advertise for peace, and I may at some point have some clerks to help me process the paperwork, but I'm not going to be buying a new car with these monies. All these monies are to bolster Christianity, straighten it out, and increase the level of peace in the world, human society. I can't bring a perfect peace. That's Jesus. But we can increase the peace in the world. So anyway, it looks like I ran over here on the timeline on YouTube. We'll see if they print or post the whole thing or whether they make me chop it up. Anyway, have a good day. Wake up. Times are changing.